I've built a comfortable life for myself, marrying into a well-respected family no less, though Travis always seemed to wear that smug smile when he mentioned it. We were sitting in the stylish lobby of an upscale boutique hotel downtown when his sharp, cutting tone abruptly shattered my peaceful mood. He was bragging about his new wife, none other than the daughter of Sterling Industries' president, and his self-satisfied laugh filled the room. It wasn't until he dropped that name that everything slowed down for me. I recognized Sterling Industries immediately, though its full significance took a moment to really hit home. My name is Jasmine, and I'm 37, living contentedly with my husband, Travis. I work in our family's luxury retail group, handling mostly administrative duties, while my father, its esteemed president, oversees major strategies. As an only child, I'm expected to eventually lead the company. Despite the weight of that future responsibility, I've always maintained a careful balance between my professional life and my personal one, especially when it comes to Travis. He only finished high school and works for a local moving company, a demanding job that I've always respected. To spare him any feelings of inadequacy, I rarely bring up my university degree or mention my inevitable succession as president. Travis and I met through a mutual friend back in college. After my friend's move was handled by his company, she introduced us. Initially, Travis was interested in her, but after being turned down, we gradually got to know each other. His easygoing charm meshed well with my meticulous nature, and our relationship blossomed quickly. We married in our late 20s after a brief courtship. Our marriage initially flowed smoothly, bolstered by the warm acceptance of Travis's parents. A welcome change from the typical in-law dramas many of my friends endured. Even though Travis's job often kept him out until late, leaving him physically exhausted, he remained devoted to our marriage. On even his toughest days, he'd express gratitude as I waited up to share a home-cooked dinner with him. I felt incredibly fortunate to have such a dedicated partner. However, after about a year of marriage, the harmony in our home began to show signs of strain. One night, as we settled into bed, Travis unexpectedly brought up the topic of having children, his tone edged with irritation that caught me completely off guard. I had always thought about starting a family. Although we weren't actively trying, I assumed it would happen naturally with time. I reassured him, "It's only been a year, there's no rush." I wanted children, but I knew that fretting wouldn't help matters. Adopting a relaxed tone, I suggested we might both get tested if there were any concerns. But Travis, more forceful than ever, rattled off statistics. "You know, there's about a 90% chance of conceiving within a year if couples aren't on birth control, right?" Not deeply versed in fertility science, I countered. "Well, maybe we're part of the 10%. That number seems unusually high to me. If you're worried, we should both get checked out." Instead of discussing it supportively, Travis's response was shockingly harsh. "What are you implying? That it's my fault? Usually it's the woman's responsibility," he snapped, his tone heavy with contempt. It was the first time he'd spoken to me in such a dismissive way. I hadn't accused him of anything. I merely suggested we tackle the issue together. Yet, Travis concluded that I was blaming him and added, "It's definitely the woman's fault," as if to drive home that I was the problem. I wanted to protest, but I was too shaken, barely managing a quiet, "So just you get tested. I'm too busy with work." "I have a job too, you know. You just coast along in your dad's company," he retorted sharply. His words stung deeply. I never simply coasted. Although my role involved a lot of routine tasks, I was actively absorbing management skills from my father in preparation to eventually take the helm. That night, every attempt at further discussion was met with curt, icy replies. We ended up falling asleep with our backs turned, an oppressive silence hanging between us. From that moment, Travis's attitude toward me shifted drastically. One evening, after a serious discussion with my father about the future of our family's luxury retail empire, I returned home to find Travis livid because dinner wasn't ready. "I'm sorry, I just got home 15 minutes ago. I'll start cooking now. Just wait a little, please," I explained hurriedly, but Travis brushed me off. "That's typical of a small-time boss's daughter," he sneered, oblivious to the fact that my father's firm is a multi-million-dollar enterprise with hundreds of employees. His assumptions and growing bitterness made our daily lives increasingly difficult, casting a long shadow over what had once been a warm and supportive relationship. Arguing with him felt pointless, so I dashed off to the kitchen, promising to cook immediately. "Have a drink and relax while you wait," I suggested softly, knowing that alcohol always seemed to calm him. It broke my heart that our relationship had come to depend on his evening drinks as a way to dodge conflict. I despised being scolded, but if a glass of wine could secure a brief reprieve, I resigned myself to it. The next morning, Travis's cold demeanor lingered as he left for work, his parting words crisp and unyielding. "Make sure dinner's ready when I get home." I exhaled deeply, bracing myself for the day ahead. I had scheduled a day off to visit a renowned fertility clinic for testing, a step Travis had insisted on, although he refused to accompany me. It was disheartening to face these tests alone, but I wasn't one to wallow in complaints. If the issue lay with me, I needed to start treatment immediately. After all, fertility can decline with age, and I was determined to address any potential problems. The clinic was bustling, and I waited an hour before my examination. After a series of tests, the doctor informed me that the results would be ready at my follow-up appointment. The thought that I might be the one facing fertility challenges was daunting, yet I steeled myself to do whatever was necessary. When Travis returned home that evening, I casually mentioned that I'd gone for the fertility test. His response was terse. "Figures. If the problem with you, it's good you're getting tested. Keep me posted on the results." His insinuation that I was to blame for our struggles in conceiving stung bitterly. 6 years later, I turned 37, and our efforts to have a child still bore no fruit. It seemed Travis had resigned himself to a childless future. His late nights grew more frequent, and sometimes he simply didn't come home. On the occasions he did, he'd claim he was out drinking and singing karaoke until dawn. His behavior increasingly resembled that of a carefree college kid rather than a committed husband, which was incredibly frustrating. As my workload intensified, the dream of starting a family was pushed further aside, but Travis's escalating indifference was becoming intolerable. His disregard for our shared life was now glaringly obvious. One day, after Travis left the house on his day off, I noticed he had forgotten his smartphone on the living room table. I picked it up, intending to put it in his room, when it suddenly rang. The caller ID displayed a name: Diana. Assuming she was just a coworker, I answered to let her know Travis had left his phone at home. "Hey, Travis, you're late. I've been waiting for 50 minutes. Hurry up or we'll miss the park opening. We haven't had a date in so long," a flirtatious voice chirped on the other end. The mere mention of a date sent a shock through me, and I quickly hung up, my heart pounding. It was clear. This woman wasn't merely a colleague. She was someone Travis was seeing behind my back. Clutching his phone as proof of his infidelity, I felt a surge of shock and anger. Here I was, grappling with the possibility of infertility, while Travis casually engaged in a secret affair. The distance between us, it turned out, had never been just about work or stress. It was because he no longer needed me. I stood frozen, trembling with rage and hurt. Determined to confront the betrayal, I began gathering evidence. Unlocking his smartphone using his birth date was effortless. The call log and messages were dominated by exchanges with someone named Diana, filled with tender, explicit words that made my stomach churn. I meticulously documented every detail with my phone's camera before returning the device to its spot, all while feigning normalcy. A month passed in this unsettling, fragmented state, until one day my father, the head of our family's luxury retail empire, called me into his office. "I have something important to discuss with you," he said gravely. His somber tone caught me off guard, and I braced myself for more bad news that only added to the stress I was already enduring. That evening, almost as if he sensed the inevitable, Travis suggested that we consider separating. I had already been contemplating divorce, given his infidelity, so his proposal was, in a way, a grim convenience. "Yes, let's divorce," I agreed firmly. Travis seemed startled by my readiness, perhaps hoping for a dramatic outburst, but I was already done. He handed me the divorce papers and said nonchalantly, "I'll file these tomorrow. I'm leaving the house." I asked casually, "What about the mortgage?" fully expecting that he hadn't thought through managing finances on his own. His job was demanding yet poorly paid, and I felt no obligation to soften the blow. A few days later, I packed up and moved back to my parents' home. My parents, though initially worried about my well-being, soon became furious when I explained Travis's betrayal. They reassured me repeatedly that leaving him was the best decision. I threw myself into work, trying to forget the emotional wreckage of my failed marriage. A year whizzed by amid relentless deadlines and projects. Eventually, my father, concerned by how worn down I looked, suggested I take a vacation. Overwhelmed and desperate for a change, I decided on a solo trip to the Northeast, craving the crisp, refreshing air and a break from it all. The Northeast's brisk air felt almost cleansing as I mingled with locals whose kindness slowly mended my weary spirit. I even splurged on a few days at a high-end hotel in Los Angeles, indulging in luxury and letting the fatigue melt away. I half joked about moving to Los Angeles permanently, so serene was the atmosphere, until I heard a familiar voice. "Huh? Hey, what are you doing here?" Startled, I turned to see Travis striding into the lobby with 2 large suitcases. The shock of seeing my ex-husband on this healing journey was almost too much to bear. Next to him stood a strikingly young woman, probably in her early 20s, with flawless skin, bold makeup, and vivid red nails that starkly contrasted the cool weather. She was dressed provocatively in a short skirt despite the chill. My eyes widened in disbelief. "Why are you here? And who is she?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. Travis responded with a self-satisfied smirk. "Let me introduce you. This is Lila, my new wife. We're on our honeymoon, and guess what? She's the daughter of a very wealthy businessman." The name Lila hit me hard. She was the same name I'd seen on his phone months ago. I felt a surge of discomfort at his blatant pride in marrying someone so much younger and so richly connected. "You're here all alone?" "That's pitiful," Travis sneered, his voice dripping disdain. Lila shot me a dismissive smirk. "Travis, is this your ex? She looks ancient. Hurry up with check-in," she snapped sharply. I fought to maintain my composure as Travis draped an arm around her, continuing his boast. "Yay, I'm set for life now. Marrying into money was the best decision I ever made. You keep struggling in your modest world." His high-pitched laugh cut through the peaceful lobby like a siren, a harsh contrast to the tranquility I'd been savoring. He went on to flaunt, "Lila is from Sterling Industries." "You know Sterling Industries?" he added, eyes glinting with pride. The name stirred something in me as Travis's expression lit up like a kid with a new toy. "Impressive, huh? Her family's loaded. They even paid off the mortgage on our former house in a flash. Thanks for making the divorce so effortless, Jasmine," he crowed sarcastically. "Yeah, I know the name. They're in that impressive downtown skyscraper, right?" "I've seen it," I replied evenly, my tone cool. Travis's eyebrows shot up in mild surprise. "Oh, you've been there? Well, her family owns a massive company, so ditching you was clearly the right move," Travis smirked maliciously. I simply nodded, maintaining my calm. "That building is part of our family's legacy," I stated matter-of-factly, as if it were a minor detail. "What do you mean, our family?" Travis and Lila blurted in unison, clearly perplexed. "That building is rented by my father for his flagship store. I'm not sure if your business is even in the same league, but it's certainly not a rundown place," I explained serenely. Their skepticism was palpable, and I paused, knowing there was no turning back. Yes, I know how grand it is. I was there when my father acquired that skyscraper for nearly $500 million. He was fuming about a tenant not paying their rent. Turns out it was your company. In fact, my father is a titan in luxury real estate, with assets worth over $5 billion, and that building is one of his crown jewels. Sterling Industries has been renting space there for the past few months, and they haven't paid their rent," I revealed, watching their faces closely. Lila burst into laughter, her expression mixed with disbelief. "That can't be true. Our company is thriving," she insisted, though the shock in her eyes betrayed her. Despite the discomfort of seeing Travis with his new wife, I was determined not to get drawn into their drama. Yet, Lila's loud claims that her father's firm could easily cover the rent rang hollow. Her dismissive tone suggested she thought I was fabricating just to sow discord. Realizing a simple conversation wouldn't suffice, I pulled out my smartphone right there in the hotel lobby. "I'm on a call with Dad. Send me a photo of the overdue rent notice for Sterling Industries," I said calmly. Within moments, my father sent a crisp image of an official rent reminder addressed to Sterling Industries, detailing 4 months of missed payments. I held up the image for Travis and Lila, doubting they could dismiss it as fake given the clear evidence. "See? If you don't pay soon, legal action might be our only choice." "How do you plan to handle this?" I asked evenly. Lila's confident facade faltered as she muttered something about her father being stressed with slow sales and firing staff. Travis, however, slipped into outright denial, accusing me of concocting a scheme to break them apart. "You're just trying to tear us apart, aren't you? You still haven't let go of the past. Your tactics are underhanded," Travis shouted, his voice rising with anger and old resentments. His outburst stirred painful memories of our marriage, of all the bitter words he'd once hurled when things turned sour. Now, as I stood there, I was no longer the quiet wife who would simply endure. "What are you even saying, Travis? Do you honestly think I still have feelings for you? How ridiculous! I've long been over a man like you. In fact, I pity Lila," I said steadily. "Blame me all you want, but you know why. You married me just to rush into parenthood, and when we couldn't conceive, you became the problem." Travis sputtered, his face reddening with fury. "Now, Lila and I are about to start our family right after this trip." I met his words with icy calm. "Oh, by the way, I'm 5 months pregnant. My new husband, my supportive partner at work, who also happens to be a rising star in our family business, is overjoyed. My father celebrated it like a major milestone. The shock was unmistakable on Travis's face as his earlier bravado crumbled. "You're pregnant? So, were you on birth control or something?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and relief as I looked at him. My life had moved on long ago, and now I was sure of my future, a future filled with genuine love, new beginnings, and the promise of leadership in my family's legacy. Travis's confusion deepened as he fidgeted, mumbling, "Does that mean Lila and I can't have kids? Why did I divorce you then?" His voice trailed off in dejection. "What do you mean, why? You felt betrayed when you discovered I wasn't to blame for our infertility," Lila snapped, her anger flaring at Travis's self-justification. Realizing there was no point in further argument, I delivered my final decree. "From now on, keep your personal affairs separate from mine. As for Sterling Industries, I expect full payment of the overdue rent. If you continue leasing the space without settling your debts, we'll have to take legal action. I have nothing more to say. Goodbye." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving Travis and Lila embroiled in their own quarrel in the lobby. When I returned from my trip, my new husband greeted me with a genuine, warm smile. "Welcome back, love. I'm sorry I couldn't help around the house. Are you okay?" he asked tenderly. "Of course I'm fine. I'm just grateful to have you by my side," I replied, comforted by his sincerity. Since marrying my current husband, I've felt secure and cherished, and thoughts of Travis have faded into distant memory. I eventually learned from my father that Travis and Lila's situation had deteriorated further. Despite his initial pride in marrying into wealth, Travis discovered that Sterling Industries was in deep financial trouble. News had broken on TV about an embezzlement scandal at Sterling, a massive fraud that led to plummeting stocks and a mass exodus of employees. With their finances in shambles, they were unable to cover the rent or salvage their reputation. This revelation only reinforced my relief at having moved on from that turbulent chapter. I threw myself into building my business and my new life. My boutique, which I had built from scratch, thrived like never before, even as whispers of my past marriage turned into empowering local gossip. I expanded the store, hired new staff, and launched an online presence that attracted customers nationwide. Word spread that I had once been betrayed by a man who couldn't even honor a marriage, and that his downfall was a cautionary tale for those who underestimated a strong, independent woman. At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, a modest shop that had grown into the flagship of a successful chain, I addressed my employees and loyal customers. The venue transformed into an elegant event space, buzzed with excitement. I recalled how Travis's cruel text and callous behavior had been meant to mark an ending, yet they only spurred a fresh beginning for me and for every woman who realized she deserved better than the shadow of a failed marriage. During the event, Lila unexpectedly appeared. She looked noticeably younger, perhaps because I had grown stronger. Clutching her designer purse as if it were a shield, she whispered, "I owe you an apology. I believed everything Travis said about you being cold and controlling." I managed a small smile and replied, "Then you must have seen him try to play the same games on me when times got tough. Those weren't dreams he had. They were desperate escapes." Lila's eyes softened, and she admitted, "I'm dating someone my own age now. We're building something real." After she left, an assistant quietly asked, "Was that The new partner? I shook my head. Just another woman who learned the hard way that you can't settle for less than you deserve. My boutique had become more than just a store. It was a symbol of resilience, independence, and the power of careful planning. Aspiring entrepreneurs often asked how I managed to keep personal and business finances separate. The best protection is preparation, I would say. Trust your instincts,